Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Devil May Cry 4 SSS rank Dante Must Die walkthrough. This is mission 10, Wrapped in Glory. This is a pretty tricky level. So, at the end of this you fight Dante. Shocker. Dante is very hard, but he's also very easy. The thing is, it all depends on how good / learned you are with the game. If you're like me and you're coming into it after a massive hiatus and you've forgotten everything you know, then you're going to have trouble with him. If you understand how he fights, if you understand how to exploit how he fights, and most importantly, if you understand the loops, then you should be okay. Like, I'm so rusty at this game, I didn't realise that during the QuickTime grabs with Dante, you had to mash a button to win them. I thought they just played out and you sometimes won, you sometimes lost. I used to just rely on Devil Trigger to get through them. Now, that's how long it's been, so it's been a long time. How I used to beat him involved good timing. Timing I no longer have. And it was pretty much, I buster grabbed him, he avoided it, and immediately did a stinger to punish it, to which I punished his stinger with a buster. And that's all I used to do. I used to just grab him, stinger, grab, smash him in the ground, grab him, stinger, grab, and I could kill him very easily. So much so, that's how I beat him in the Bloody Palace. And if he ever does the Royal Guard, you just keep grabbing him until he regrets it and needs a dentist because he's got no teeth left. However, in this playthrough, not really what happened. But the good news is that through failing on Dante a few times and dying to him, I kind of got back in the mindset of beating him in a different way. And the other way that I used to fight him back in the day involved a loop. A loop that I kind of refigured out but still couldn't get to work as well as I remember doing it. And I know that there's not been a patch or anything like that. But the loop, I think, what I'm going to try and implement anyway, involves hitting him 2 or 3 times, grabbing him towards you to stun him, to reset him, and then hitting him again 2 times, grabbing him towards you to reset him, shooting him, and then repeating, something along those lines. It's a loop of hitting, grabbing, hitting, grabbing, hitting, grabbing, and he eventually gets out of it, but you can get him back in it quite quick if you know what you're doing. And I can't even begin to tell you how frustrating a game can be when you remember destroying a boss, and then the boss destroys you. And you don't feel any different, but you know you are, because it's been such a long time. Also in this room here, for some reason I don't think I'm going to use the slow-mo in the middle, and I really should, because it's an opportunity to do some really unique and interesting things, so I apologise for that. Instead, I'm going to do this, which is my favourite move in the game. Like, if I could have an endless army of these enemies that would always do that, I think I'd just play this game and nothing else, because there's something innately satisfying about watching that triple S rank and all those orbs flood into your body. This is a very satisfying game, in a lot of different ways. But we're coming up to the second final level, that's what this is. It's playing as Nero until we go back to him at the end. Which I really do feel for people, because the transition is the roughest transition in gaming. Like, I'm trying to think of a game that's dropped you in the shit as much as this one does, and I really can't think of it. You know, to give you a character that controls so differently. Like, if you think of how deep Nero is as a character, he really isn't, and that's the beauty of him. He's simple, but there's technique to his simplicity that makes him interesting. You know, he only has a handful of combos, but each of them and each individual hit of them can be revved, which makes them cool. You know, he can charge his gun, he can use the buster. That's pretty much it. He's a simple character. He's a tricky character to get truly good with. Dante, on the other hand, it's fucking hard even doing basic shit with Dante, because it's full-on old-school Devil May Cry, and it's unapologetically old-school, where instead of picking a style and learning it, you have them all at your disposal, and it's super intimidating. You know, you've got all these weapons and all these different functions for all these different weapons, so much so that a lot of people probably stick to Rebellion and never use anything else, because it's so intimidating. You've gone from a very binary approach of, you know, sword and gun to here's 7 million different things. And the game does try in its, you've got to give it some props, because it introduces them quite slowly to you after you get them on the bosses, but then it just lets you go free with them. And so much so, a lot of people don't really know how to use many of the weapons, like Pandora's Box. I thought Pandora's Box had one fire mode until I read is it the enemy files or the weapon files that tell you how to do the other moves? I had no idea you could turn it into a giant laser. I never even thought to use it as Gunslinger and do all those fancy tricks with it, so I never used that weapon because I thought it was a close-range piece of shit, like a wannabe Kalina Ann. And it turns out it's a really interesting weapon with some super useful functions. But you have to find them, and that's the beauty of this kind of game design. And that's one of the things that is most interesting about the Wonderful 101 to me, is gamers nowadays are so judgmental of games before they've even played them, or before they've even tried them, that they'll not play something based on how it looks. And, they're judging the book by the cover, which you're told to never really do, even though that's how society works. But not only that, when they get into a game, because we've been so pandered now, and we've been handheld and checkpointed and waypointed and everything in games now is so overtly focused on smoothing out the discovery part of a game. It's not about discovery anymore, it's not about learning, it's not about challenge, it's about the experience. It's the roller coaster, it's the A to B to C linear sequence of events told the way the game developers intended, and it's dumbed down to such an extent that anybody can get to the end because they want you to see the ending. They don't want you to get stuck on the first level and never get any further. They want you to see the full game. It's that conflict of interest in, you made this beautiful game, but you'll sacrifice its difficulty or its challenge and functionality as a game so that more people can enjoy it in that medium. And the Wonderful 101 is completely unapologetic in level design, in game design, in everything it does, so much so that I was raging on my first playthrough, because there were moments when the game would throw me in the deep end, expect me to understand what it wanted me to do, and the thing it wanted to do was so just ridiculously strange that I could not figure it out. I immediately failed, died, felt bad about it, and got pissed off. And it happened a dozen times. And it's all because that game trusts the player to figure it out. And 20 years ago, nobody would have batted an eyelid. They would have just been like, that's a cool game, that's how games are. Because games used to be, here's a game, I'm not going to tell you where to go, that's your job. And you used to run around until you figured out where the door was, or where the event trigger was, or where you were meant to go, and sometimes it'd take hours. You would be going completely lost, you had no idea what you were doing, where you were going, and you would stumble onto something, and you'd eventually get further. That's just how games were. Times have changed, and they've changed to such an extent now that whenever a game comes along that doesn't give you that strict hand-holding, it's a shock to the system. And I don't know who's to blame here. I don't know if it's the industry itself to blame for, homogenizing how games are instead of them being this tactical thing of discovery, learning, and getting better and improving, or if it's the gamers themselves that have been so pampered and so, just unchallenged for so long that when challenge does turn up, they don't want it anymore because they're so unused to it. I don't know where you place this blame. But a game like the Wonderful 101 suffers because of the time it's released, because of the generation that it's in. And it's this strange irony of the game could not exist without the technology, but it's a game that I just don't think benefits from the current generation, because it's people who do not have the patience or the will to learn how to play a game. They want everything immediately handed to them. They want it all to be immediately aware. They don't want to know how. They don't want to figure out, how to do something. They want the game to tell them how to do something, and then they just do it. It's almost this will for subservience. They don't want the discovery, they don't want the exploration, they want this path that's always telling them what it's meant to be doing. And there's a YouTuber called Darkside Phil that personifies this for me, amazingly so. Because he has this saying that he says a lot, how were you meant to know to do X thing? And his logic is always the same. You had to buy the strategy guide to understand what you were meant to do. And I'm sorry, folks, I love Darkside Phil. I'm not insulting him in any way. I think he's the funniest YouTuber that exists. Albeit not for the reasons he thinks, but I still stick to that statement and I enjoy his channel. But games used to be that way. You know, they were meant to be mysteries, because the mystery was the fun of the game. You know, once you learnt it and once you knew where you were going and you beat it and you mastered it, you didn't play it. You moved on to another game. And the enjoyment was that start part. It was the punishment. It was the not knowing. It was the how the hell do I do this, you know? How do I beat this boss with only 2 continues? Because if I do, I go back to the start and I have to do it all over again. And then, you know, a week later of playing, or, you know, you talked to your friends and they were playing and they helped you out and they taught you some tricks, you got past him and you used to look back like, how the hell did we ever used to die on that boss? And it was... You became a better player, and the game rewarded better play by giving you more of the game. Games aren't like that now, and neither are gamers. And it's why the games that are looked on as hardcore or old school, games like Wonderful 101, games like this, when this came out, I guarantee you now, if you look back at the reviews for this game, there'll be somebody saying it's punishingly difficult. There'll be somebody saying that the game throws you in at the deep end when you switch to Dante because it doesn't prepare you for him, and the game just goes 0 to 10 in no second at all, and it becomes insanely frustrating. Completely guaranteed, that is what you will hear. Because the people at that time who reviewed it were playing all the other games, and all the other games were getting more accessible, more commercialised, more user-friendly, you know, gaming experiences, not games. And it's just how it is. And as we move forward now, where the definition of what a game is changing, like, you can't say, you know, this is how games should be, or this is what games should be, because games are transformative now, you know. They're finally getting acknowledged as the art that they are, this celebration of every single artistic field that exists. So now that we have games that you don't kill a single enemy, you know, you don't do a single arbitrary task, you just exist. And I'm glad these things exist, I think it's great. But at the same time, I think traditional gaming, or core gaming as they say, or hardcore gaming, whatever you want to say, you know, the fucking jargon that gets thrown around, I think it's been led astray in some ways. And I think that's the reason why a game like Dark Souls... Ooh, be careful here. Whenever Dante starts royal guarding, grab his tits. Grab them until they are milked dry, because it's the best way to damage him, and he cannot build a just release. If you hit him with anything else, you're dead. Trust me on that. I got just released on one of the takes that, you know, obviously didn't work. And it was hilarious, because he just released something almost impossible. Like, something you could not have seen coming, and he just perfectly did it. It was amazing. Full-on AI being perfect. But as I was saying, sorry, I think the gamer, or the mentality of what games were, that nostalgia factor and, you know, just that mystery is something that's coming back, and it's something that is on display in games like Dark Souls and Demon Souls, and it's the reason why those games get this reputation for being insanely hard. Are they insanely hard? No. It's just a culture of gamers who've never been challenged, who've never wanted to be challenged, so when the challenge turns up, they quit, and they go back to the game, which is just the carrot on the stick without the challenge. You know, it's just the enduring, put in time and win, put in time and win, winning, getting trophies for taking place, you know, for taking part, rather than placing. And it's strange, but it's shifting, and it's shifting for the better, and the Wonderful 101, when I eventually bring that guide to you, is going to be a really good project for that, because a lot of people are looking at that game as if it's a kiddies game, and I'm sorry folks, but that game's fucking harder than this, for me, because the technique required of the player to do stuff in that game is so high at the beginning. Like, you just don't know what you're doing. It's a mind fuck. It's like Fez. It's like Portal. The first time you played Portal and it blew your mind, it's like that. And sure, once you figure it out, it's probably much simpler, but that figuring out process is both amazing and horrifying at the same time. And, you know, it's that beautiful punishment that games seem to lack. But thank you very much for watching. I apologise I didn't talk too much about the Dante fight, but I think the fight speaks for itself. You just have to try and use your buster, use your abilities to get him close, punish him, counter him, and then you're going to be playing as Dante after this next mission. So thank you very much for watching, and you take care now. Christ.